us here, and it is wonderful to be back home. This is home. My parents still live here, and I get to visit quite often. Actually, as we drove in today, I noticed some construction, some things, and I thought, when I come home to visit my parents, I should get out more because there's a lot of changes over the last few years. So happy to be here, and thank you for welcoming SCORE and for your participation in this evening's events. We're here in the East Regional area to have a community conversation, or to hold one, to discuss the state of education in Tennessee. I appreciate the acknowledgement of my years of service in Tennessee, because that's something that I am very proud of. I'm very honored to work with SCORE now and to get to travel the state and work with people across the state who are very interested in this topic. And most appreciative of our panel members this evening who are going to join in this conversation. We are particularly happy to introduce and acknowledge the presence of some of the community leaders that we have here in this region, and I really hope that I don't miss someone. This has been one of our largest crowds, and we're so excited about that. We just really appreciate your involvement in this, and we know it's been an exciting day in Knoxville for education all the way around, and can't wait to hear from that, Dr. McIntyre. Know that you'll address that with us in a little bit. But we also have, so I don't want to miss anyone, and I would invite superintendents or other elected officials in the room that if I miss you, please acknowledge yourself. I want you to do that because we're honored with your presence here today. I would like to note that we have some superintendents in the room that I was able to note as they came in. Jeannie Barker from Lower City's here. Connie Holdway from Claiborne County. Connie, there's Connie. Vicki Violet from Clinton City. Stephanie Thompson from Maryville. And let's see, Melanie Miller from Sweetwater City. And I think that's all that I saw. I hope I don't miss any other superintendents. And then, of course, we have two superintendents on our panel. I'm going to hold off for you two in just a minute. We also have two SCORE steering committee members that are here tonight with us. Jara Summerford from TEA is here. Thank you. And Buzz Thomas. Thank you for being here. We also have Anthony Wise, president of Pellissippi State. Thank you for being here. We have a couple of school board members, Sandra Williams. And Sandra, I'm not sure which district you're from, but we're glad that you're here. And Dr. Nancy Williamson from Oneida Special School District. And I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Williamson as the TSBA Board Member of the Year and congratulate her on that special award. And then I understand that we have Richard Briggs, a Knox County Commissioner, that's here with us this evening. And so I hope I haven't missed any elected officials or anyone else. There's a number of prestigious people that are here, and we appreciate your attendance in this meeting. And by prestigious, I mean lots of educators in the audience also, and we have a number of students with us this evening. So we're extremely tickled about that. Tonight, we're here to talk about the state of education in Tennessee, where we've been, the progress we've made, and the recommendations for how the state continue to move forward on a pathway to improvement. We're also here to listen to you and to hear about how the work is progressing in this community and in your own smaller community, because this is a regional conversation. And we're here to talk about ways that we can work together to achieve our goal of preparing all students for success after high school. I will go ahead and say that there may be some issues that are local for you in your own community or here in the broader community in Knoxville, or there may be issues that we understand that are being considered statewide and being discussed and debated in the General Assembly right now. Those issues are very important issues, but they're not issues that we're going to focus on this evening. We have a short time together, and we have a lot that we're going to talk about during that time, and so we wanted to acknowledge that up front. We're joined by a panel of leaders from this broader community to aid in this discussion, but we also are excited because you'll have an opportunity to weigh in some on this discussion this evening also, and so we're looking forward to that. If you pre-registered with us, we've also have you tied into a survey that's going to come to you during this evening's conversation. So if you have your smartphone with you in about 30 minutes or so, I'm going to get a cue that it's gone out, and you can take your phone and there's 5 or 6 questions and you can answer those right then, and that'll give us some feedback. If you prefer not to do that, we've got paper surveys for you, but we want you to be able to give us some feedback from what you're hearing about the conversation this evening as we go along. Also, our staff will be utilizing social media, such as Facebook and Twitter, to hear from you this evening, and we want to give you additional opportunities to interact with us. I know several on this panel tweet regularly because I'm one of your followers, and so it is okay, panel members, for you to tweet during the session. We've been enjoying that as we've been going into communities over the last few weeks. If you'd like to follow along with us, please use hashtag EdConvo to share your thoughts and ideas with us. At your seats, you have some information there that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And our panel members also have folders with this information. You're going to find in your stack of information that you have there a card that looks like this that gives you a number of ways that you can keep up with SCORE and follow our work. There are also a number of other materials there. We have our State of Education report that we'll refer to in a few minutes, and we'll need that, so don't put it too far away. And you also have an Expect More, Achieve More brochure. And then we have a card that, because of the teacher in me, I'm going to refer to as our homework, our assignment in a little while. Okay, so I want you to have that nearby too. And then you have a blank card, and that card's very important, and I'll tell you about, no, they don't have a blank card. I'm not getting the cue, no blank cards. We changed our mind on that one. You're going to get a blank card in a little while that we'll give you, and we'll give you some information on that. But before we get into using the materials, I want to give you some information about what we're going to be talking about this evening. SCORE is an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit founded by former U.S. Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist. We have 2 main goals as an organization. The first is that every student in Tennessee graduates from high school prepared for college and career. The second is that Tennessee becomes the fastest improving state in the nation with regard to student achievement outcomes. Our work is focused on 4 specific drivers of student achievement: high standards, strong leadership, excellent teaching, and using data. We do this work because the world has changed. What's required to be successful of our students today has significantly increased since most of us here in this room were in school. If you look at the next few slides, I'm going to share some statistics with you and some information. Several facts make it clear that there's a strong connection between jobs and education. There are about 3 million job openings across the country right now that can't be filled because there's a lack of skilled workers. And 70% of 25 to 54-year-old African American men without a high school diploma are unemployed. A college graduate makes an average of $1.2 million more during their career than a worker with only a high school diploma. And finally, a math problem for us is that 8 of the 10 fastest growing occupations in Tennessee require some kind of post-secondary education. This next slide shares some information about unemployment and earnings for full-time workers. And we can see by looking at this that our students who graduate and are able to have additional training are going to have a better opportunity to make more in their career, as well as less likelihood of being unemployed. We can see on this next slide that there are far too many Tennessee ninth graders ready to graduate from college, or who will eventually graduate from college. As you can see from this graphic, for every 100 ninth graders in Tennessee, 86 graduate high school. Of those 86, 49 enroll in a public post-secondary institution of some kind, and currently only 51% of those that enroll will complete that program within 6 years of high school. So we realize that our state is not keeping up with the changes that are happening, and we're losing too many students along the way. Of those graduates, far too many of them are unprepared for them to be able to live, work, and play in Tennessee or wherever they choose to do, and do it with success. In response to these challenges, Tennessee has committed to a bold set of reforms to ensure that all students graduate from high school prepared for college and the workforce. These efforts include, first, a focus on identifying, recruiting, supporting, and rewarding great teaching, since we know that effective teaching is the most important school-based factor in improving student achievement. Second, raising academic standards and expectations for all students through the Common Core state standards. We know that when we expect more of students, they achieve more. And in Tennessee, we're raising the bar to better prepare students for their future. Third, having accountability for student results, accountability for students, teachers, schools, school districts, and our state as a whole. Fourth, a focus on turning around our lowest performing schools and providing students with access to great teachers and high expectations. Fifth, a strong emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, since we know that these are quickly growing fields in our economy. And finally, using data to enhance student learning and make decisions that improve teaching and learning in our schools. Each of these 6 areas is an important part of the work that's happening in schools, school districts, and across Tennessee, including this community. As a result of this work, in 2012, Tennessee students made its most academic progress in the state's history. The report that you have in your seat, the 2012-13 State of Education in Tennessee report, takes a closer look at the progress and what we must do to sustain and accelerate this. I'd like for you to take your book with me, please, and I'm going to break down the book for you and share with you what you're going to find in here. The report is divided into 3 sections. The first section is called the Year in Review. This section lays out our most important state academic results, and that begins on page 15. So I'll give you a second to turn there. And I'll give you just a second to turn through the next 2 or 3 pages to see what's included in that. You'll find information about TCAP, ACT, advanced placement data. This Year in Review section also includes an extensive look at the work behind the gains by gauging our state's progress on implementing our education reform plan. The third section of the report, the scorecard, begins on page 61. So I'm going to give you a chance to turn back there. This section provides detailed data on every school district in Tennessee, from math proficiency to college readiness rates. I'm going to pause for a second because I know what everyone wants to do. They want to look at their school district. So I'm going to give you a chance to do that. The bulk of the report begins on page 47. So if you want to keep your finger where your school district is and then turn back to page 47 with me, then you'll be able to take a look at the section where we outline our 2013 education priorities for Tennessee. While there was substantial progress in 2012, much work remains to be done to ensure that Tennessee's education reform agenda is implemented consistently and that it leads to outcomes for students that we want. The 5 priority areas that we recommend are the areas where there's real opportunity and in many cases a need to accelerate our work. These priorities are the reflection of significant research and progress monitoring done over the last 9 months. The progress monitoring work is based on extensive feedback from teachers, principals, administrators, superintendents, higher education faculty, the Tennessee Department of Education, and other very important partners that we work with. If we really move the ball in 2013 on each of the 5 priorities that are listed in our report, we will move closer to ensuring that all students are prepared for their future. The first priority is sustained policy leadership. Tennessee has made significant reforms over the last several years, reforms that have led to important early gains in student achievement. As the work has shifted from policy development to implementation, the state must remain committed to ensuring the reforms are implemented effectively. The second priority is fostering great teaching. Research shows us that great teaching is the most important school-based factor in improving student achievement. 2013 should be the year when Tennessee ensures that only its most effective candidates are teaching our students. To do this, we must make standards for recruitment and licensing more rigorous. Third, we must do more to support effective school leadership in Tennessee. Although Tennessee's leadership strategy is poised to make substantial improvements in school-level leadership, not enough has been done in this area, and it remains a high priority in Tennessee. We must all take steps to ensure that our school leaders are strong instructional leaders. Fourth, Tennessee must develop a thoughtful, well-informed strategy to develop the technology capacity in schools and school districts. The use of technology to support learning and instruction is on the rise. With new investments being made in technology, we must ensure that we're thoughtful and strategic consumers of technology and education. And our final recommendation is to empower parents. It's important to empower parents with the resources and the supports that they need to help their children succeed, particularly as the state raises the bar in the classroom through the Common Core state standards. Over the next hour and a half, we want to hear from you. We're going to hear from our panel members about how this community has risen to these new educational challenges. And we're also going to talk about what challenges and opportunities exist moving forward to make sure that we make progress in these 5 priority areas. We know that the work that has been accomplished so far in Tennessee and in this community comes at the expense of the dedication of a lot of people to help our students make the gains that they have. So for the next portion of our time, we're going to hear from some of the people in your community whose leadership has been very critical in help preparing for these next steps. We've tried to strategically invite some of our partners, people that we've worked with from this community, to be a voice for a particular role. But we realize that everybody up here assumes many roles. They most likely are parents or grandparents, as well as they may have been products of education in this community, myself included on that one, but a number of roles. But we specifically wanted to take a look at that, and we honor everybody's contribution to this conversation this evening. So I would like to take a moment. We're going to pause, and I'll tell you how the rest of the evening's going to go. I'm going to next turn to Dr. McIntyre, and he is our host and superintendent, and we thank you for allowing us to be here in your fine town. And I give him a chance to say a few words and talk about his role. And then we're going to move down the panel and let everyone else introduce themselves and any opening statements that our panel members would like to make, and just telling who they are and why they think this conversation is important this evening. And then before we engage in the conversation, I'm going to turn to Alan Pratt. And Alan is the core director for the state of Tennessee in this area. And Alan's going to share with us some data for this area. And then we'll open up our conversation. We have 2 guiding questions for the evening, and we'll come to those in just a minute. And then we'll end the evening with some audience participation, a way for you to engage in the conversation with us. Okay? So, Dr. McIntyre, thank you for having us here.
Oh, yeah, no, my pleasure. Delighted to be here. It's a great day for public education in Knoxville. My name is Jim McIntyre. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Knox County, and delighted to be with you today. I see Pam Trainer, who's one of our school board members, is here as well. I'm not sure she got introduced before, so thanks, Pam. Just very briefly, I mean, I think it's a great conversation for us to be having today. We had United States Secretary of Education Arne Duncan in town today. He visited 2 of our schools, and he was here at the university giving a lecture at the Baker Center. And I think it's probably a great sort of jumping off point for our conversation, because I think he was here in part to acknowledge a lot of the hard work that's happened in Tennessee around public education, and a lot of the hard work that's happened here in Knox County schools and in our region around public education, and to acknowledge some of the strong academic progress that we're making as a result of some of the really hard decisions and hard work that have happened in our state, in our community, in making sure that we're focused on high-quality instruction every day in our schools. And so I think it was it was wonderful for him to acknowledge that, but I think a part of his visit was also to encourage us to continue the hard work, to encourage us to continue to make the right decisions for kids and continue the focus on making sure that everything we do is geared toward providing an outstanding education to our children. So it's a great day for public education in Knoxville, and delighted to be here for this conversation this evening, continuing the dialogue around public education.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'm up. Hi, I'm Autumn C. Prey. I am a professor at the University of Tennessee. I'm the director of the Center for Educational Leadership, which houses the Leadership Academy, which is a unique to the country, our country, in terms of how we prepare school administrators. And this year we are seeing some very exciting results. We're in partnership with Knox County Schools and other districts in Eastern Tennessee. And we have 2 or 3 fellows in the audience. Katie Luton is here, Byron Booker's here. Who else is here? There was one more person. I wanted to make sure I acknowledged them. Hey, Christy Wood. So we have some fellows sitting in the audience who are unique and dynamic administrators. And I guess the piece I would also add is that I myself am a former principal, and I'm a firm believer that the professorship and academia cannot be in a sealed-off ivory tower. So I enjoyed very much being a principal, and when it was time to choose, do you want to be a superintendent or not, I said I want to go be a professor and help make other great principals. And I was a professor in other universities before coming here, and the reason I came here is because nowhere else is there a model like what we're doing, and the partnership we have built is something that I'm really, really proud of. And we're really starting to see that pay off in the changes that we're seeing in schools that have been led by our graduates.
I guess I'm up next. Hi, I'm Ann Haston. I am a Knox County Council past president. There's another one in the room. Pam Trainer is a past president of Knox County Council PTA. And Debbie Bowles is another member of our county council. I became a PTA mom when I had an elementary school son who began to struggle. He was developmentally delayed. So I learned through that you can advocate for your own child and advocate for other children as well. So my hat's off to teachers. Teachers are some of my best friends. And I'm also these days an advocate for our 40,000 military children that we have in our state, because my husband is with the Tennessee Military Department.
I'm Sharon Coker, and this is my 23rd year in education, K-3, all at Pigeon Forge Primary in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. This past school year, I had the opportunity to be a core coach for the state of Tennessee in mathematics and got to meet a lot of great educators across the state. I'm a nervous wreck up here. I'm on spring break this week, and where better to spend your spring break than with a great group of educators. That's dedication.
So much. You are dedicated.
I'm Jeremiah Cordero. I'm a student representative from Lenore City High School. I'm the treasurer of the 2012-2013 National Honor Society, as well as one of 2 captains for our swim team. So I meet and talk to a lot of students throughout my high school, both academic excellers, as well as those who are more that go more to the athletes. So I hope to represent them well, and I'm glad to be here.
Isn't it awesome that we have a student voice?
Very difficult to follow with the student voice. I was hoping you'd kind of stumble a little bit so I'd be okay, but I was kidding. I'm sorry. My name is Alan Pratt. I'm the East Corps Director with the Department of Ed. I believe, I was trying to count in my head, I think 19 years in public education. Very exciting, the changes going on in public ed. I'm excited to be a part of the changes. I think we're going the right direction, and it's really great to be here with SCORE and the partnership we have with the Department of Ed and SCORE. So, thank you.
My name's Charles West, and I'm proud to be the least academically accomplished person on this panel. I am here as a parent at large for the Maryville City Schools, and until December, I was a member of the Maryville City School Board. I chose not to run for re-election, but they still tap me to do things like this. So Maryville has been such a great experience for me. I run a family business in Blount County, and I am the parent of 3 children, 2 in the system, 1 not quite there yet, but she'll be there soon enough. And really, truly enjoyed just my time as both an alum of the Maryville school system and as a parent, and serving on that board and just seeing all the great things that go into it. So it's become, education policy has become quite something I've been quite passionate about, and didn't think I'd be there in life, but that's what happens. So I appreciate you all having me tonight.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Vance. I'm the Director of Schools in Loudoun County, and I'm just blessed to be here. I'm really excited to be with this panel. This is a great group of educators, and it's great to see you guys out in the audience, too. I've enjoyed working with you over the past several months, and I think we've got a lot of really great things going. I've got a 3rd grade boy and a 5th grade girl, and I'm excited about the reform in Tennessee. I think it's going to help prepare my babies to earn college scholarships whenever they graduate high school, and I think it's going to help them get job opportunities once they proceed from there. You know, it's so much different from what it used to be. When I was in high school, we competed against local high schools. Now our kids are competing against kids from across the nation and across the world, and so I'm really excited about the reform that we're seeing in Tennessee, and believe that we're making great strides. And I don't want anybody to leave this meeting tonight thinking we're doing anything other than what's amazing in Tennessee. I think it's amazing. I've seen some commercials that have been contradictory to that. I don't believe them, and I believe after tonight there's going to be some great evidence to support that we're doing great things tonight.
I'm Alan Lutz. I'm the Education Workforce Development Specialist with the Roane Alliance. The Roane Alliance includes the Chamber of Commerce, the Industrial Development Board, and the Tourist Bureau for Roane County. I also lead a program that's called Education Matters, and its goal is to ensure that every child in Roane County goes to a post-secondary school, whichever type it is, and they do well when they get there. I work with the school districts, with Roane State Community College, with the Technology Center at Harriman, with local business leaders, and with family members, parents, grandparents, students. I participate in community festivals and go out and talk to parents, grandparents, and students, and try to encourage and to let them know how important it is that their education matters and that they set good, high goals for themselves. Because I think the expectations we give our children is as important as anything else that will happen in this system. I am also a mentor and the Roane County liaison for an exceptional program called Tennessee Achieves. And if you don't know about it, you need to learn about it. It is a wonderful program. And I guess finally, I am a father. I have a daughter who will begin next year as a freshman going to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Just to let you know, she turned down the potential of a full scholarship at Alabama, but she didn't want to be, she did not want to be an engineer. And so she turned it down. So I'm glad to be here this evening, and I have stories I can share with you and why education matters and why the efforts of SCORE and our educators as a whole, and particularly the efforts of parents and our students, is critical to the success of our communities, our state, and our country.
My name is Rick Wilson, and I'm privileged to be an administrator in Maryville City Schools and be one of the administrators at Johnsonville Elementary School in Maryville City. It's also quite a privilege to be a part of this panel, and one of the many reasons it's a privilege to be a part of this panel is that one of the former students that we used to have in middle school science is a part of this panel, and that's Mr. Jason Vance.
It's the cornerstone of my education foundation. That's
So I just think that, you know, it's great to see this broad range of stakeholders involved in public education, and I don't think it's any secret to any of us that it's taken this broad range of stakeholders to help us get to where we're going in Tennessee, which is hopefully to become the most rapidly improving state in the Southeast and quite possibly the nation. So we understand it takes all this to get Tennessee education turned around. We're committed to it, we embrace it, and we're ready to accept the challenge of that.
I'm last. I'm Jim Idle. I'm from a supervisor in the Knox County School District in the IT department. My focus area is the E-rate program, infrastructure planning for new facilities and renovations in the school district, as well as working with some innovative special projects like the STEM Academy or the River Distance Learning Project. Those have been very exciting. I also represent the Tennessee Educational Technology Association, which I currently have the pleasure of serving as vice chair, and that's the professional organization of technology educators and in-district technology folk across the state. And I'm really pleased to be here, and this is a lot bigger house than I expected, so I'm glad you're all here.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure you can tell then, we're going to have a wonderful conversation this evening with our panel members. Before I turn it over to Alan to talk about the data for this area, I do want to note, I noticed Dr. Larry Foster walked in from Anderson County Superintendent. I'm not sure who went. I'm kind of sitting low, but I want to welcome him. Pam Trainer, I didn't get to see you before. Thank you for being here, old friend and Knox County School Board member. And Dee Haslam is here, and I'm not sure where she's sitting right now, but she serves on, thank you so much for being here, and she serves on our scoreboard, and so we appreciate you being here this evening. So, Alan, we'd love to turn to you and let you share with us some data for this region.
Yes. The first slide you will see will be the number of non-proficient students in 3-8 math, which is, you see the 2012 number of 234,193. In the East region, we had 38,303 that were not proficient. The number to look at in that area is that we tested over 72,000 in the East region. And our East region consists of 21 school districts. So you're looking at 21 total school districts, 3 through 8. The next slide is reading language arts in 2012, which you see the number is over 222,000 and that are not proficient. The East region, again, their number is 34,879, with the major number being 72,000 tested. When we get into the high school or the EOC exams, courses that are put up there, you see the Algebra 1, 4,740 students not proficient. In the East, we tested over 11,000. In the state, it's right at 30,000 that were not proficient in Algebra 1. So, you know, like I said, 4,700 students that are not proficient. English 2, you're looking at 4,000, just over 4,000 students. Once again, in the states, 29,494. In the East, we tested over 11,000 in those areas. The next slide is kind of two tables put together, and you're looking at proficiency increases in all 4 areas last year for the East from 2011 to 2012. You'll see 3-8 math from 42.6 to 47.1, an example. And in the red, you see that we increased right at 3,400 students in each of those areas, in that area in the 3-8 math. As you go across 3-8 reading language arts, you're looking at an increase of, from 50.6 to 51.9, with a big number of 937 students increased. Algebra 1, we increased by 1,000 students, and the percentage went from 47.5 to 57. So it's a big increase there for Algebra 1, which is a good promise for the future and what we're trying to do. And a lot of credit goes out to our directors here and the directors in the East region. And English 2, just a slight gain to 64.3 to 64.6, and I think that number is 38. It's a very small number that we increased that year. A couple of key points. The East was above the state level 3 out of the 4 areas, which is very positive. When you look at across the state, we do fairly well. Across the state, of course, there's always room for improvement, and that's kind of what our job is based on pushing student numbers. And then the key positive is we increased in every area. And we're increasing in every area, but what's coming on us with Common Core, and we get PARCC tests later on, we have major challenges coming, and I think we're ready for the challenges, but it's going to be an effort like this to make sure we get all of our students where they need to be. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, I'd like to recognize Mike Lowry, just walked in, Superintendent in Monroe County, so thank you for being here. Well, let's turn to our conversation then for this evening, and let's start with our first question, which is what work over the last year has enabled you in your specific community to make the improvements that you've seen in student achievement? We've heard the big view for the regional area. Our superintendents, I'm going to turn to you first here on this panel, because your community as well as your boards charge you with leading the entire instructional program and everything that goes with it. And so would love for you to have an opportunity to kind of drill down and talk about those things, because we want to learn from each other and with each other this evening. So Dr. McIntyre, would you like to start?
Yeah, thanks. We had the opportunity to talk earlier in the day with Secretary Duncan and Governor Haslam about public education in Tennessee and here in our community. And when you think about public education in terms of a policy environment, and of course one of SCORE's priorities is sustained policy leadership, and I think SCORE has done a tremendous job, the governor has done a tremendous job, our legislature, our State Board of Education has done a terrific job in making sure that we really have the best, I think, policy environment in the nation in terms of public education. Some of the reforms that have been put in place the last few years, some of the initiatives that have been put in place, I think just create a landscape that allows for innovation and excellence in public education. And I think probably, and there's really 5 or 6 major changes that have occurred over the last few years, but I think probably none are more important than the 2 that I think I would put at the top. The first is higher academic standards, in making sure that we have high expectations for kids and high expectations for ourselves as educators, and really raising the bar in terms of our academic standards. Almost literally from among the lowest academic standards in the country to the highest academic standards in the country in a very short period of time. And I think that makes a huge difference in terms of really being honest about where we are in public education and allowing us to set really ambitious goals for the future. And I think the other incredibly important change over the last couple of years has been the new evaluation system in the state of Tennessee. Moving to a situation where we evaluated teachers twice every 10 years to a scenario where we evaluate every teacher every year. And half of that evaluation is based on student outcomes, half of it is based on classroom observations with a great, for the default model, the team model, a great observation rubric that we use, a great instrument that we use that really it looks at what great teaching is. And I think that's made an enormous impact. When I think about how we've approached that as a state and here locally in the Knox County schools, and how we've approached that evaluation system as a professional growth model, as a developmental model. And the fact that here locally in our community, we had about 10,000 conversations last year around what an observer saw in one of our classrooms and what evidence they saw of great instruction in the classroom, and had a conversation with a teacher about what they could do to refine that work or reinforce some of that work. I think it's just incredibly powerful, and I think that has really, when you look at the outcomes that we've seen in terms of student learning and student success in the state of Tennessee, and the really positive, strong academic progress we've made here in the Knox County schools, I really have to attribute a good percentage of that to this new evaluation system that we've put in place and the fidelity with which we've tried to approach it.
Thank you so much. Jason, I'd love for you to talk through this also, but if I could ask the panel members, when you do talk, we have these wonderful microphones here. Make sure we talk into them, because I understand in the back it may be a little bit harder to hear. We're also doing a little videotaping, so we'd love to get your voice.
Thank you very much. I think Dr. McIntyre very eloquently stated the great things that are going on, and I want to echo those things. I think he's absolutely right. I think in addition to that, First to the Top really afforded us some great opportunities that we wouldn't have had otherwise. I think that provided Loudoun County, at least, with some opportunities to do some different things as far as coaching was concerned. And through those opportunities, we've really, I've always felt like administrators owned the data and understood what the data looked like, but I think that sometimes that didn't get all the way down to the teacher level, and I think that today we're seeing it all the way down to the student level, and we're seeing ownership with the students. My own kids come home and say, Dad, I need this many more questions correct in order to be advanced or proficient on whatever it is. And I think that's amazing. You know, I know that Knox County is doing some really good things with that. And it's really cool to look at how the core offices are working to help school systems as well. I know that Mr. Pratt has been able to get out and provide us opportunities to have people provide data for us. And I see one of our data coaches in the room and one of our math coaches in the room, and the different things that they're providing to help school systems. Additionally, Dr. Roberts, I think that one thing that's better than we've ever done before is sharing. You know, I don't hesitate a minute to pick up the phone and call any one of the superintendents in a room and several of the supervisors that I know in the room, and I say, hey, I know that you're doing some great things over in Anderson County. Larry, won't you share with me and help me how show me how you're getting there. I want to get there as well. And I think that we're doing a better job about sharing, and I believe that through that partnership that we're creating across boundaries, across the state of Tennessee, I think that we're going to see great transitions. And I guess I would conclude by saying I think that our professional development has transitioned from a shotgun approach to we're going to try everything that we think looks good and pretty, as compared to something that's laser-like and focused on exactly what's going to help students achieve greater gains. And I believe that ultimately is going to drive to having each individual kid almost like each kid having their own individual IEP. And I think through those efforts, we're seeing greater gains in Tennessee, and I'm excited about what we've got going on and what's yet to come.
That's great, thank you. Rick, I would love for you to weigh in as a school principal, your work with teachers and with students.
I think I would agree with both directors of schools in talking about the evaluation model, but I think the key to point out is that the evaluation model is focused on the kids. It's focused on the students. That's an entirely different shift from years past. And with the focus on the students, it's enabled our teachers to be able to hone in and look at the specific ways every individual child can grow. And I think that's important because all of our data is focused on student growth at this time. So having a tool that would enable us to do that is powerful. I also agree that I think the collegiality is promoting between not only in our building, but between our buildings, like in Maryville City where we have our different schools. The collegiality is promoting there, but yet we can also go to Knox County or Loudoun County and talk with those teachers because it's enabled us to have a common vocabulary that we've never had in education. Mm-hmm. And that's a powerful, powerful force in education to have that common vocabulary, because ultimately every one of us sitting here and sitting there wants every child to do well. And it doesn't matter where they're at district-wide, we want every child in Tennessee to do well. And I think that's important to note too. The evaluation model, from a kid standpoint, what it looks like, it's turning their thinking into doing. It's more than labeling A, B, C, and D on a test. It's more about being able to put what's in their head down on the paper into words. And that's important. And for them to be able to do that, none of us are going to sit here and say that's been an easy transition. It's not. It's a very difficult transition because it's required us as educators, teachers, principals, and so forth to learn a different way of instructing kids. So, but the evaluation model has done that for us. And I think, from a teacher transitioning from more about telling the kid how to letting the kid find out, that's something special to see in a classroom. Me personally, I can tell you that being able to see a kindergarten student tell you 3 different ways they arrived at the same answer, something I haven't seen in 32 years. So I know it's working.
Thank you. I want to turn to Sharon. I know this is an uncomfortable event for you. You are a stellar teacher, and we know that when we've seen your work that you do in your school and that kind of thing. So from a teacher's view, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the improvements that you've seen.
Well, with the evaluation model, of course, I'm sure that the teachers have been the most stressed over the situation. I have a very good rapport with my principal and have had for years, and don't mind at all for her being in my classroom anytime she wants to come and visit. And of course, I know that administrators get overwhelmed with their responsibilities, and sometimes they're not able to come to classrooms as often as they would like. And this new evaluation model has afforded them the opportunity to be in our classrooms, both unannounced and announced. Of course, I was one of those that fell through the cracks a few years back. I had an evaluation one year, and then the evaluation model changed within 5 years, and I didn't have another one for 7 or 8 years. So when this new model came in, it's like, I'm going to be there every year. And I do like that when a teacher scores a certain level, that there's not as many observations required, that you do look at what we are doing and tweak it a little bit. I have already survived this year my 1 formal observation and 2 walkthroughs, so it's been good. And for the children to see the principal and the assistant principal in the school, in the classroom, and for them to be able to see the kids working. And like Mr. Wilson said, be able to see those children to come up with answers 3 or 4 or 5 different ways and get the same answer. It's been a really good experience. Even though we've thought it and cried and shed a lot of tears over it, it has been a good growth process for us.
Want to open it up to anyone else on the panel who'd like to talk about their views on the improvements that we've seen in Tennessee and in this region?
I'll be happy to jump in here.
Great.
Let me move to a little bit different on the card here. One of at the very bottom, it talks about empowering parents. I think you all know that parents are already empowered. Many of them just aren't using that power. That establishing high expectations for one's children is critical, because frankly, that's where our goals and objectives that our children set in life is initially coming from. And without that being set very early on, that you will be successful, you can be successful, then the kids start on a trajectory that is not good and is very difficult for our educators to do something about. I'd said I'm involved in community conversations. One of the early conversations I had was a grandparent who was at a festival that I was at. They were reading 4 posters, and one of the posters, all 4 posters support the value of education. But she read one about how some people regret not graduating from high school. And she read it and looked at me and said, you know, I never regretted that I didn't graduate from high school. And I said, really, ma'am, you've never regretted it? She said, nope, never did. I regretted that my children didn't graduate. And that led to a discussion of, ma'am, your children will value what you value. And it ended with, I need to go talk to my grandchildren now, because that's where expectations are being set. And when they come into your classroom, you know, you're either you're enforcing great expectations or you're trying to change them. We do a couple programs within Roane County. One of them is called the Tennessee Scholars Program. That's what this mug is here. That sets high expectations for students. And we reward the students for meeting those expectations with things like this mug that we end up giving to sophomores if they've met the Tennessee Scholar Standards. But they go with discipline, attendance, a C average, but in high-level courses, so that they're encouraged that, take the important courses. The Tennessee Diploma Project basically grew out of Tennessee Scholar Standards. And so that's where it came from. Then we also tell children that you can go to college. You can. Many of our children grow up being told, you're not going to go to college. That's not for you. It's not for our family. And we start off as soon as possible, and we start telling kids, yes, you can. And that's where Tennessee Achieves comes in, because it will pay for the last dollars that students need to go to a community college. And Mr. Buzz Thomas spoke in Roane County 4 years ago about that program, and we have it now pretty much statewide. Let me tell you the impact of that program. Last year, we had 104, over 23% of our high school graduate students going to community college alone. So the percentage is a lot higher for college as a whole, but just community college. 104 students, 23% of the graduating class. 62 of those students were first time in their family to be college students. Parents had never been. And because of mentors that are in the program. But the key here is we are setting high expectations for these students and letting them know they can live up to it. The students are empowered, the parents are empowered, and we let the parents know that you make all the difference for your student. And so for us, that's been critically important. And as our secondary supervisor in Roane County said, that really for first time in a while he's seen, the students are coming out of high school believing college is in their future because it's making it happen. It doesn't have to be a 4-year or a 2-year, it could be the technology center, but some form of post-secondary education.
Thank you. Awesome. That's great. Jeremiah? love to turn to you from the student's perspective. Love to hear your thinking about changes you've seen the last, you're a senior, right?
I am.
So changes you've seen in the last few years in your school.
Well, I have noticed that our standards have been raised up a little. Before we only had to take so many math classes, history classes, and all that. I think it's good that we're raising these standards, like you all have said, because, say with history, if you only take one class of history, you're not going to learn it. And if we don't know our history, then we're bound to repeat it. So I believe that setting these standards higher will educate, or better educate, these students to where we can lead a better life on in the future. Because if you don't know how to do simple math or know how to read and write, more than likely you may end up working at McDonald's. And personally, that's not where I want to end up. I plan on having my own civil engineering business. So I've always tried to set the bar higher. That's how I was raised, and I like that. So I think it's a good thing that you all are raising the standards and working with us to help better us later on in life.
Do you have advice for us? A lot of educators in this room.
Well, I know some students, some classes are very vast or have a large scale of where people are in their academics. And probably said that really confusing, but you got some really smart people in the class that get it the first time they hear it. Then you've got some students that need a little bit more practice before they can get it. And I think that the best teachers are the ones that will teach it to you, and then instead of moving on with the first person who gets it, staying on that subject and working with the people who haven't gotten it. But not just going over the same thing over and over, to where for the people who know it, start getting bored, they think, oh, I don't need to pay attention, and then their grade starts lacking. The best teachers, I think, are the ones that work with every student and keep it entertaining, or keep you involved, your mind occupied on what you're doing, so that it's a fun learning experience, as well as getting every student in that room to understand and comprehend what you are teaching.
You're going to do well. You're very poised and your fire. I can imagine being sitting on a panel like this at your age. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts about that. And so that makes it a hard job for teachers. You know, it's a really hard job to be a good teacher. So we appreciate that. Others on the panel, any other thoughts? Dan, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I just loved what he was saying about empowering parents, because I think you're correct. Not all parents realize that they are empowered. And as a parent of a child who struggled in school early on, we did not lower the bar for him. In fact, we encouraged him. He might have to study longer and harder, but he would get there. And he did go to college. He hasn't yet graduated, but he's going to be 1 in 25 that graduates within 6 years. He's almost there.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. Others? Jim, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I always look like I want to say something. So that's not necessarily so, but so we don't leave technology out of the conversation on things where we've met some goals. I'm glad to see and I think the TETA group is glad to see the conversation start to shift a little bit from technology being isolated and being more of an administrative tool to becoming really a part of the classroom. I started in 1983 at the age of 10 as part of Governor Alexander's Computer Skills Next program, was on the writing committee, and we absolutely were teaching kids the history of computers, and we were just learning about technology. And now, just 30 years later, we can start to have a conversation about learning with technology. And I think that's a huge shift that's really important for our students.
Big shift. Thank you for sharing that. Charles?
Well, along lines, kind of bridging the parental involvement and the technology thing, one of the things that has worked well in Maryville And it's one of our built-in advantages, and any community can roll their sleeves up and get some degree of betterment in this area, is our foundation, which is not a part of our school system. It is a supportive group outside of our school district. But everybody, all of our technology needs, all of our improvements, we can all run into the roadblock and say, if we only had more money, if we only had more money. And in everybody's local county and city communities, we're all running against budget caps that we're not going to be able to improve in the next 5 years. And I think our state does a pretty good job with the budget, but they're not sitting on a big, vast amount of education funds waiting to just unleash the tap. And we all know the federal government's $16 trillion in the hole, so there's not going to be much coming from them. So while we have this great moment where education is one of the few bipartisan issues everybody agrees upon, and public education can be resolved, and we can do it, and things are going really well, in your local communities, no matter how discombobulated your school boards or some of the city councils and county commissions are, you can tap the right people to establish a good foundation. And we opened up a brand new school in Maryville this year, and $100,000 of our technology needs, Promethean boards, things like that. That check was not written by our tax revenue. That was all nonprofit gifts that had been raised by our foundation. And so no matter how incompetent your school board is or incompetent your county commission is, you can still find a good foundation. And I say that because I'm a school board member. So you can still tap and use your chambers of commerce. They are a great tool to bridge that local community and education. So many times you just don't know where to start on the community level to get your local business community talking to the education side of the house. And the Chambers of Commerce are great facilitators for that process and getting that started. So we've been very blessed in Maryville, and it really helped us out. So that's kind of off the beaten path, but that's...
No, that's good. Thank you for adding that. Dr. Cypress, before we move on to the next one?
I think one of the biggest changes when it comes to principals and what the principal's job is that, it used to be that the people who became principals were the ones who were around the campus the most. They were coaches. And that's a natural transition. And then we kind of started thinking about principals as like the mommy or the daddy of the school. And now principals' roles are often like policy brokers. So they really have to be up on what's happening around the state in terms of state policies and expectations. And in addition to that, principals have this other unique responsibility, and that they are cheerleaders for the school, but they're also the grounding force that helps that school community embrace accountability. And have you ever heard, anybody can be a teacher? You ever heard that? Yeah, it's not true, but and let me assure you, in teacher land, lots of people think any teacher can be a principal. And let me double dog dare you assure you, it is not so. Because not only do you have to be a policy broker and help translate those things about like Common Core into tangible things, and to be a cheerleader, you have to have the courage and the fortitude and the internal ethic to be able to sit down with the teacher with this, you're making the teacher face at me. You have to be able to look at that teacher with the kindness and say, let's think about what our job looks like now as opposed to what it might have looked like when you started your career 2 years ago. And what does that mean? And how do we rethink our identity as educators? And that's a wallop. I mean, I'm not saying, well, I'm going to tell, I'll look at the teacher, I'm not going to tell you how it's going to be. It's not that. It's she made the face because her whole identity is about the craft of getting students to think, and she's now got to think every day about what does that relate to policy and Common Core. And when my principal comes to see me, how are we going to talk about that together? And then he's on the other side, so that's scary. Because now I got to deal with him because I'm just a principal. So the role of the principal has evolved into a much more complex thing than it was before, and it requires people with skills that are based on finesse and a ethic of care, and also an understanding that if you do have one of those conversations that are critical, that are challenging, it's because you're doing it because in the end you're trying to make the school better for the kid. And some days you go home as a principal and everybody hates you, and some days you go home and everybody loves you. And that's also a hard skill to learn, and that's something else that's changed in the last 2 decades about how principals have learned about their job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very insightful, thank you. Your surveys came in a while back, so if you haven't checked your phone, you might want to do that. Just want you to know that. Let's shift to our second question for the evening, and that's to really look at the challenges and opportunities that exist moving forward. In order to make progress on those priorities, and remember their sustained policy leadership, fostering great teaching, supporting effective school leaders, using technology to enhance student learning, and empowering parents, those 5 priority areas, what opportunities and challenges lie ahead of us to really move the needle on that over this next year, the remainder of this year? I want to open that back up to the panel and fair game for anybody.
We'll take one, I
Go.
guess.
Go
Yeah.
for it.
First of all, I believe when you're looking at the 5 priorities and you talk about what SCORE's doing and what the State Department's doing, what our directors are doing, what our communities are doing, I think the key word is community. It's the community that's going to help kind of stem reform in the sense of we cannot do it, the State Department cannot do it alone. The school system cannot do it alone. It's going to be what I call the collaborative effort, because it will not happen unless we pull together. And Mr. West hit it right on it. You know, no matter what's going on in your community, you can find areas where you can pull from to make things happen. And I think when you look at challenges and opportunities, it's always an opportunity when you're talking about students, because you never know what you're going to be able to do and what you might change that's going to make our next president, our next governor, whatever it may be. I will say this, I didn't say it earlier, I'm a product of the area, I'm a product of Maryville City Schools. I know some of my teachers were here today, they'd be like, oh, he's on the panel, that's great. You know, I don't know, it might be a shock, but anyway, the point is, I'm glad they were in my life, because I think they led me to this direction. So, and I'm really happy to be in the field of education. I was a principal, I was one of those coach principals that was in the building a lot and that was promoted as a principal, and then I realized, you know what? What's my biggest impact? As the principal, I can change the culture and help change the culture in my school, and I can be that instructional leader. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have going forward. So I'm proud of the East Region, and we have great districts, and we have great leadership in the districts. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Others?
Dr. Roberts, I think there's a couple of particular challenges. I guess the first would be around implementation and making sure that, certainly, as I said before, I think we have probably the best policy environment in the country in terms of public education. But there's been a lot of change, and I think it's incumbent upon us as district leaders, as school leaders, as educators, to make sure that we focus on implementation of what's been provided to us with fidelity, with focus. And I think there's, people ask a lot about, well, how did Tennessee do so well? How did the Knox County schools do so well last year in terms of making academic progress? And the answer is there really isn't a silver bullet. It's just a lot of hard work on the part of a lot of people over a sustained period of time. And having the right people in the right place focused on high quality instruction every day is what it's going to take to make sure we really accelerate the progress that we need to accelerate in order for our kids to be prepared for their future. I think the second part is, the second challenge that I see is really investment, and making sure that we have the level of resource investment and human capital investment that we need to be successful. And I think one of the challenges that I think we face as a state is that, and certainly here in Knox County as a community, is that there's some level of satisfaction with where we are, that we've done a fairly good job. But in today's world, good enough simply is not good enough anymore. In the past, and I think that it was said very eloquently, in the past there have been, there's been an opportunity for someone to get a high school diploma, or maybe not even get a high school diploma, and still do okay, and still get a decent job and make a decent wage and be able to buy a house and raise a family. And those days are gone. Our kids today are going to have to compete for opportunities and for careers with kids from around the country and around the globe, and they need to have the skill set and the competencies and the knowledge to make them competitive and to make them be prepared to be successful. And so I think making sure that we recognize that it's a different world and it's a different way that we need to educate our kids, and making sure that we have the resources and support to do that, I think is a pretty enormous challenge for us as a community.
Well said.
Yes,
So we can't take our foot off the pedal,
Mm-hmm.
and we're doing it for the children, and for their future, because we really don't know what their future's gonna look like.
Right.
And Jeremiah's already let us know he has high standards for himself. So I'm sure all the other students do too. So thank you. Others?
To touch on the priority two about foster great teaching, one opportunity I see out there is we're looking right now in this economy where you have this contraction in the retail sector, contraction in the manufacturing sector, and as I said, the government sector is going to contract too just because they don't have any money. It's a great opportunity to find great teachers right now. If I was the Dean of Education at UT right now, I'd be at Claxton smiling because you're just going to have great class after great class, because right now, if you're a young college student looking for a great career opportunity, there aren't many good middle-class opportunities out there, and teaching provides a great job opportunity. It's stable. It's something people are very, you can be proud of what you're doing to help society. So I think in the next generation, the crop of educators is going to be even better just by virtue of the fact that it's one of the best choices out there. So I see that as one of the opportunities. I do think something we don't think about much in this state, there's so many communities where so many children have no father figure in their life. And we don't do a good enough job recruiting the K through 3 male teacher. There's a good crop of male educators in the upper levels because they get to coach, and that's a rewarding part. But there's so many children in our communities that have no male figure in their life, and I think we ought to double down our efforts to, get more male educators in the elementary level, just because they need some strong male role models in their lives.
Dr. Roberts, can I jump in? Now, my specialty is administrators, all those Darth Vader evil people. So I want to be careful that I defer to professors whose specialties are on teaching, but I am impassioned to want to jump in there and have a statement. When I think about our opportunities for building capacity about teaching, there is nothing quite like a career in education. It is an amazing opportunity. And you know what? Our dean does smile a lot when I see him in the hallways. But the scary part about teaching is that a lot of people go into it as very young men and women in their 20s, and they think, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to do it at Bearden High School because that's where I went, and it's one of the most amazing places, and I can't wait to go to Bearden. And then they learn that, you know what, where they want to go, they might not be able to. So one of the things we face as a profession, I'm so happy to see people nodding in the audience. One of the things we face as a teaching profession is that people who aspire to be teachers often don't think about being married to the profession. They think about a particular school. It's kind of like if you say, my brother's a pilot in the Army. Well, when you're in the Army, you go where the Army tells you. Just like when you're a principal. A lot of people say, boy, I want to be the principal of South Doyle Middle School. And if you're Beth Blevins, you're really lucky you get to do that. But a lot of people who want to do that don't get to do that. So one of the things as a culture that we have to face, especially in these times with the implementation and the fidelity to implementation that Dr. McIntyre was talking about, you've got to make sure you get the right people on the right bus. And a teacher who is at a school that they do not want to be at is a teacher who needs to be inspired desperately. And no matter how magical I am as the principal, I'm not going to be able to do it, because the right people on the bus is what starts that incredibly important work of implementing with fidelity. And when I think about the biggest challenge that we're facing, it's that I go back to the critical conversation, the nuts and bolts, nitty-gritty, long conversations we have to have together about all the stuff I don't want to do, all the stuff you don't want to do, and then the stuff we have to do because we're trying to move a school forward. So there's very, very complex levels of how do we build that capacity in the teaching ranks? And you could say the same thing about principals too. But you're right, it is one of the greatest professions, and boy, I hope we get more men in elementary school in the teacher role. But it's also a puzzle that I think Dean Ryder thinks about while he's smiling, which is how are we going to help our young aspiring teachers understand, are they maintaining fidelity to a profession, or to their favorite school in Bearden.
Thank you. Others?
Yeah, I've got one. Actually, two things I want to point out. When you read your book here, you will read about of course, the TCAPS. You will read about the Tennessee Value Added Assessment System and the Early Warning Data Systems. Basically, what those all are dealing with is performance data about our students, but also performance data on the part of our educators and the schools as a whole. One of the challenges that I see that we will have is going into the empowering parents, it says share that data on student and school-wide performance. There is a reluctance, I know this firsthand, to share that data. Because when you have a projection of a student who is supposed to be doing exceptional in math or something, and then when you say, where is it going wrong? We're working with her, but there's these issues. Let's see the data and the classes she's been in and those educators. And the answer is no. You don't have a right to know. And that's a challenge that we have because parents want to know. And if we're not willing to use that data that we have to in fact improve student performance and the performance of teachers and schools as a whole, then we are doing a great disservice to the community as a whole. The second thing is on fostering great teaching. As you saw here, it talks about a lot of things about making teachers more effective and better and all. But one of the big measures of an effective teacher is students who get it. Whatever that lesson is you're trying to teach, when you're done, they get it and they learn from it and know how to apply or what they need to do. When I talk to students about the importance of going on the post-secondary education, I tell them, here's what income distribution chart is. I said, you know what higher income is, lower income, middle income? And most of them have no clue other than it's higher, it's lower, it's middle. So I show them the data, where those spreads are for top 3 tiers or the top 30%, middle 6, middle income, bottom 3, lower income. And I ask, who wants to be in the top? And I get a show of hands. Who wants to be in the middle, be it upper or lower? At that point, virtually everybody. I've only had one student ever said, yeah, I'm happy in lower income. Only one. And I've talked to hundreds of students. And then I say, how about this? What if right now we could flip this coin, and if you call it correct, you can be in middle income or higher. But if you call it wrong, you're stuck in lower income. Who would take that bet? And the answers I get are, you gotta be crazy. That's stupid, that's dumb. Who would make that kind of a bet? Bet your future on the flip of a coin. And the answer is, if you graduate from high school and stop right there, you have a better chance on the flip of a coin to get out of lower income. You need to go to some form of post-secondary education. And when I tell the kids that, those students, they go, I get it. Now I understand how important and why it is. And that's the type of things that those students need to learn a lesson by. And effective teachers will communicate that. Not just the flip of a coin about their future, but whatever classroom it is, so that it is relevant to them.
Jeremiah asked me if he could have a closing comment, and he didn't know that I like to turn to our student representative to ask if they have parting words for us. So I really appreciate the eager student in you, Jeremiah, and would love to give you a chance to tell us some words or say, make a comment.
All right. Well, listening to everybody up here, I like what everyone has said, and I hope that your all's plans do go into action and carry on the way that you all hope they will. Talking about getting more teachers, more male teachers for the lower grades, I work as a lifeguard, and one of the things we do there are teach swim lessons. Well, the first time I had to do it at least once, and now I go back and do it. I volunteer for it now, because working with these kids, I assess them the first day and see where they are. I then work with them to get their courage up, to get their skills up, to where they can start swimming and do what they want to do in the water. And it seems like a struggle while I'm teaching them how to swim, But once they've learned and they're comfortable in the water, just the facial expressions, the feelings that they give off, is something that I treasure so much that I volunteer over and over and over again. And I would ask anyone out there who thinks about teaching, try it. There's no harm in trying at all. It's a very warm feeling when you can say, I helped that child better himself or get to where he wants to be. And so if you want to be a teacher, if you have thoughts, I say try it. And another thing I would like to say is as we go on in life, technology becomes more and more of a part of our life. Well, I think that people should know how things work. Maybe not knowing the ins and outs of a computer, but I think kids should know and be able to do some of the things like typing or putting 2 + 2 into a calculator. I think they should know how to do that. So with technology, I think that we should also be learning the reason why it happens. I've had several teachers teach us a lesson over something in math and science, and it seems confusing at first, but we work on it and we get it. They then come back and show us a simpler, easier, and quicker way of doing it with the technology. Makes us really hate that past lesson. We'll never use it again, but it's still a good idea, I think, to show people how it works and why it works. So that way, if someday we don't have the luxury of having the technology, we'll still know how to do it. But using the technology, we can improve our way of life for the future.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Very insightful thoughts. Thank you for the insight into your thinking and also for inspiring us and reminding many of us in this room why we became teachers in the first place, why we wanted to do that. So we're so proud of you and thank you for your participation tonight. We want to thank everybody for being here this evening. We know you had many other options of things you could do, and it's a big day in Knoxville and a lot of activity around education, but I can't think of a better thing to be talking about in the evening but about our students and making sure that we provide the right conditions for them. We want to remind you to fill out the survey if you haven't done that. We would really appreciate it if you would. We also want to remind you to stay connected to SCORE after tonight. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook. You can also email me at sharon@tnscore.org, and I'm happy to help you or assist you in any way that I can or carry this conversation on with you further. Setting all of our students on a pathway to college and career will take a lot of hard work, as we've talked about tonight, and it's obvious that everybody in this room is up for that challenge, and there are many other colleagues that couldn't be with us here tonight, and community members. It will take the hard work and the investment of everybody, our civic leaders, our school and district leaders, teachers, students, parents, business leaders, and all community members, so we thank you for that. I encourage you to continue this conversation. The card, we hope, would be a way of doing that. Our slides, anything that we have, we're willing to work with you and share with you. If you want to take this back to your school as a conversation or into your smaller community, we're happy to help in any way, helping and facilitate, helping with materials. All you have to do is reach out to us because we want to be a part of making the solutions work for this community as well as our state. The work that we're going to do in Tennessee over the next few years will have significant implications for Jeremiah's future and every child that you know. So thank you for working with us hard to do that. Thank you for your commitment and your support, and we hope that you have a wonderful evening. Thank you for being here.